In the studio with me this morning is the Chief Curator of the Winnipeg Art Gallery. His name is Andrew Kear. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Nice to meet you. First time we've met.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, of course, I've seen all your exhibits at the WAG.
Oh,
so
that's good.
That's how I know you through your exhibits anyway. So
Great.
That's close anyway. So you've got a couple huge exhibits on right now. In particular, well, there's one in particular, French Moderns, Monet to Matisse, and there's one called the Impressionists on paper. So tell us a bit about these exhibits, how they're separate exhibits, but they sort of go together.
That's right. We wanted to bring these two shows together to address a kind of common theme, a theme that hasn't been shown here much in Winnipeg, but that we know Winnipeggers enjoy, and that is Impressionism. So the first show, French Moderns, comes to us from the Brooklyn Museum, and it constitutes about 60 works of art, to which we've added about a dozen works from our collection, and it covers this century from 1850 to 1950. Everything from, as this title suggests, Claude Monet, one of the founders of Impressionism, to Matisse. At the heart of this exhibition is really the French Impressionists, Renoir, Matisse, Mary Cassatt, people like that. And we've added to that, actually our director has added to that in terms of a show of about 20 works on paper from the National Gallery of Canada. So you get another sense of the Impressionists in this show. It's called Impressionists on Paper. And while the Impressionists are known for their oil paintings predominantly, this show shows you another aspect of their practice.
So what is it about the Impressionists? I mean, when you look at this list of painters from the Impressionist era, what is it about? Like, well, they're all household names.
They're all household names. I mean, the Impressionists are really the first that bring us modern art in a sense. They're the ones, and we talk about a modern artist, we often visualize paint that's kind of expressively
Jackson Pollock.
Jackson Pollock. You don't get Jackson Pollock without the Impressionists. So they're a touchstone for modern painting. But they're also exploring themes of everyday life, landscape painting, still life, themes that are very, I think, resonate with people and which people can identify with.
So one of the things I guess they did is they brought painting outside of the, outside of the house or outside of the, the buildings, right? And took it outside and...
fine distinction. Artists, of course, have been working outside for centuries, but what the Impressionists did was take their actual finished, quote-unquote, canvas, bring it outside to a field or a countryside and actually work on it there, so that there's very little in terms of preliminary studies. They were working directly on the canvas itself.
So when it goes into selecting some of these pieces, is this the Brooklyn Art Gallery? They have a touring exhibit, and you guys hook into that and decide, well, these are the pieces we want, or is it more selective? Good
question. Impressionists on paper we very much had a selective role. Our director went to the National Gallery and selected the works himself. For French Moderns, Brooklyn Museum, like a lot of northeastern United States collections, has an amazing collection holdings of European art. So they offered these works for tour. We were able to negotiate a couple of items, and they very generously allowed us to add some of the WAG's kind of crucial areas that actually the WAG fills in the show quite nicely from our own collection, but again, like about a dozen works.
So these ones you've had these in the collection for a long time, the ones that you guys own, yeah?
That's right. I think there's a Dufy, there's a Chagall, these works that people will probably be familiar with, but to see them alongside a collection of the caliber of the Brooklyn Museum, I think brings another light to it. Are they ones that were in the basement? You had to bring them up, or have they been on display for... Some of them, but I'm trying to think in my head here, but certainly some of them people will be familiar with from our permanent collection displays in the past, but because our permanent collection area has been shut down temporarily because we're expanding the Inuit Arts Center, we're trying to find other ways of integrating our collection, and certainly Brooklyn was great in allowing us to do so. I'm in the studio with Andrew Kear. He is the chief curator from the Winnipeg Art Gallery. We're talking about these two exhibits they're running concurrently, the Impressionists on paper and French Moderns, Monet to Matisse, runs from June 16th to September 9th. So are there any sort of, quote, hits? When you talk about the Impressionists, like these painters, Monet, if you had to pick out any specific pieces that people might be iconic from this. Okay, so sure. So there's an iconic Monet in there, a seascape. I mean, you don't get any, it's from the 1870s, so it's primo. Impressionists roughly run from the late 1860s. Their first exhibition is 1874 formally until 1890 or so. So you have this wonderful Monet from the 1870s. We have a spectacular Cézanne. So Cézanne is an artist. Paul Cézanne was an artist who very much was influenced by the Impressionists, by Camille Pissarro and people like that, but really started doing his own thing. Was really a forerunner for Cubism, and so you see that exquisite work. There's a number of academic works too. That is, paintings that were done in the that slick academic style that the Impressionists were in reaction against, that are actually quite interesting too. So it shows you where the Impressionists sort of got their that kind of rebellious spirit, and then there are, of course, a number of amazing works that come after Impressionism. Again, I mentioned Matisse, but there's certainly others as well. And there's actually a great selection of sculpture as well. So a number of really crucial works by, for example, Rodin.
Let's talk about the Impressionists on paper a little bit. So that's a little bit of a smaller exhibit.
About 20 works,
20 works. What tell us a bit about it.
So this brings together, when you think of the Impressionists, you think of these canvases that were often done outside. So the question becomes, why were the Impressionists work, what would a drawing or a work on paper function as? And so this gives you another lens into how the Impressionists were working. Some of the drawings in the Impressionists on paper show were done as kind of studies. Others are prints that were done after a major painting was done. And some of them are just autonomous works on their own. That is, drawing treated not simply as a secondary art to oil painting, but as a legitimate medium unto its own. And so that's the kind of the real importance of this show. Again, it brings out into focus artists who are not in French modern. So Henri Toulouse-Lautrec. There's works by Mary Cassatt. One of the issues with the shows that we discovered was there aren't a lot of women artists represented that came with the Brooklyn show. So we were able to, our director was able to add a number of female artists to the Impressionists on paper roster to kind of expand that. It sort of just allows visitors to kind of get a broader view of that time period, especially in the 1870s, 1880s.
So as a curator, how exciting is it for you to see all these pieces gathered together in one place?
It's fantastic. So I don't get to Brooklyn that often, so it's great to see these works here. And they're, as I said, the Impressionists are just such a touchstone. You don't get Cubism, you don't get Picasso without Impressionism, you don't get Jackson Pollock without Impressionism. So they are foundational to our understanding of modern art. Some people may find that hard to believe, but at the time their work was absolutely radical. So I love that kind of historical snapshot of the past.
Well, I've known a number of people who've already checked it out. It's only been around for a couple of weeks, and they've just been blown away. They've just loved it. So, and sounds like an awesome summer.
It's going to be a great one, and I just want to put a little plug out there. There's a free talk tonight. Our director is giving a free talk on basically Impressionism. So if people want to learn a bit more, and it's a free event, do stop at the gallery. It starts at 7 p.m.
So June 16th to September 9th, Impressionists on paper, French moderns, Monet to Matisse. What else you guys got going on this summer or the next little bit?
Oh my goodness! Well, a lot of our programming is based. We're of course in preparation for the Inuit Arts Center, which is in 2020 still, but
That's not that far away.
That's not that far away. So we are working very hard to ensure that the inaugural exhibition, the collection, all looks spectacular for our audiences when they come to visit in 2020. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys got your work cut out, but it's fun and exciting time.
Fun, yes.
Well, I appreciate you making the time to come down this morning.
My pleasure.
Nice to meet you. And this is I've been talking to Andrew Kear, Chief Curator from Winnipeg Art Gallery. We were talking about French moderns, Monet to Matisse, and the Impressionists on paper. For more information and tickets, go to thewag.ca.